What's the history of African Americans? No, don't answer straight away. Just give it a thought. What is the collective past of around 50 million African Americans living in the United States today? What connects them together? Well, if you have passed through the educational system, you might have already been brainwashed. You have been told everything began from slavery, and the history ended when slavery ended. That's a very carefully exposed history to ensure African Americans settle at low and whatever they are offered. That's a bitter truth, but everything African Americans get is compared to what they did not have during slavery. Therefore, allowing them to live is considered a favor done to them. But what's the true history of African Americans? What goes even beyond slavery? If you have always wondered how to educate yourself about the history of African Americans, this video is just for you, in which you will learn the forbidden part of Black history. Let's get started.
The Black History Archives.
Everyone explaining African Americans' history begins with slavery, forgetting that before that, Africans were striving and prospering in Africa. Long before the arrival of European powers, Africa was home to powerful and sophisticated empires that flourished for centuries. These civilizations were built on extensive trade networks, advanced political systems, and rich cultural traditions, disproving the false narrative that Africa was primitive before European colonization. For instance, the Mali Empire, which lasted from 1235 to the 1600s, became one of the wealthiest empires in history due to its control of gold and salt mines. Mansa Musa, its most famous ruler, is widely regarded as the richest person in history. His legendary pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324 displayed Mali's wealth to the world, distributing so much gold that it destabilized the economy of Egypt for years. The city of Timbuktu, a major center of learning under Mali's influence, attracted scholars from across the Muslim world, housing thousands of manuscripts on subjects such as mathematics, astronomy, and law. Similarly, the Songhai Empire, which succeeded Mali, became the largest empire in West Africa, known for its administrative efficiency and military power. Under the leadership of Askia Muhammad I, Songhai expanded its borders and reinforced Timbuktu as a center of intellectual life. The Songhai Empire's collapse, following a Moroccan invasion, marked the end of one of Africa's greatest powers. In southern Africa, the Kingdom of Great Zimbabwe rose to prominence, known for its impressive stone architecture, including the Great Enclosure, built without mortar. It was a hub for trade, connecting Africa to the Indian Ocean, and exported gold and ivory as far as China. In West Africa, the Benin Kingdom was famous for its Benin bronzes, stunning artworks that symbolized its wealth and advanced craftsmanship. As European powers began to expand their colonial empires, the transatlantic slave trade emerged as a brutal and defining force, starting in the 15th century. European traders, beginning with the Portuguese, established vast networks of human trafficking that forcibly removed millions of Africans from their homes, shipping them across the Atlantic to work on plantations in the Americas. The Middle Passage, the treacherous journey across the Atlantic, subjected Africans to unimaginable horrors. Packed into ships under deplorable conditions, many did not survive the voyage, with mortality rates as high as 20%. Those who did were sold into lifelong slavery, their identities stripped away and their freedom extinguished. Yet enslaved Africans brought with them rich cultures, languages, and traditions which survived despite attempts to erase them. These cultural foundations profoundly influenced the development of African American identity in the United States. Enslaved people preserved elements of their heritage through music, religion, and oral storytelling. Even as African Americans endured enslavement and systemic racism, they fought valiantly in every major American conflict, from the American Revolution to the Civil War, often with promises of freedom that were rarely fulfilled. Here's a reminder to please support us so we can make more videos for you by subscribing to our channel and giving the video a like. We want to build a strong community, and we need your support. Let's continue now. In the American Revolution, both free and enslaved black men fought on both sides of the conflict. The British, in particular, promised freedom to enslaved Africans who joined their forces, leading thousands to flee plantations and fight for the British cause. Figures like Crispus Attucks, a black man, became one of the first martyrs of the Revolution, killed in the Boston Massacre of 1770. After the war, many African American loyalists who fought for the British were resettled in places like Canada, Sierra Leone, and the Caribbean. However, the promises of freedom often went unfulfilled for many African Americans who fought for the Patriots. Enslaved black soldiers who were promised freedom were often forced back into slavery after the war, their contributions largely ignored by history. By the Civil War, African Americans became central to the Union's war effort. After President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, nearly 200,000 African Americans joined the Union Army and Navy, fighting for their freedom and the future of their people. Notable units like the 54th Massachusetts Regiment became symbols of black courage and determination, particularly after their heroic but costly assault on Fort Wagner in 1863. Despite their contributions, African American soldiers faced profound discrimination. They were often relegated to menial tasks, paid less than their white counterparts, and faced extreme danger if captured by Confederate forces, who often executed black soldiers rather than taking them as prisoners. After the war, black veterans were largely denied the benefits awarded to white soldiers, and their service was downplayed in the post-war narrative. During the 18th and early 19th centuries, free black communities began to take root across the United States, despite the widespread presence of slavery and systemic racism. These communities arose in urban centers like Philadelphia, New York, Charleston, and New Orleans, where free African Americans began carving out spaces of autonomy and independence. These areas became vibrant hubs for cultural expression, economic activity, and political advocacy. Within these free black communities, African Americans built their own institutions, churches, schools, and businesses that catered to the needs of their people, offering both services and a sense of community. Meanwhile, in southern cities like Charleston and New Orleans, free people of color often worked as skilled tradespeople and business owners, becoming integral parts of the local economy. In 1865, newly freed African Americans sought to build on the progress made by their free counterparts, acquiring land, starting businesses, and establishing self-sustaining communities. By 1910, African Americans owned over 15 million acres of farmland, mostly in the South, marking a critical step toward economic autonomy. Land ownership provided a means of self-sufficiency, allowing African Americans to break away from exploitative labor systems like sharecropping and tenant farming. However, African Americans faced significant challenges as white supremacist groups like the Ku Klux Klan rose to power, using violence and intimidation to suppress African Americans' rights and economic progress. Promises of land redistribution, like the famed 40 acres and a mule, went unfulfilled, leaving many black families vulnerable. Through lynchings, arson, and economic sabotage, white supremacists undermined black land ownership and self-sufficiency. However, African Americans continued to fight for their independence, creating cooperative communities and black-owned businesses, such as Mound Bayou in Mississippi, a town founded by formerly enslaved people. These towns became symbols of black self-reliance, despite the constant threat of violence and systemic racism. Their persistence laid the groundwork for future movements toward economic justice and black empowerment. The harsh conditions of the post-Reconstruction South led millions of African Americans to seek better opportunities elsewhere, sparking the Great Migration. Between 1916 and 1970, over 6 million African Americans left the rural South for industrial cities in the North and West. This movement, driven by economic hardships and racial violence, reshaped American demographics and culture. Many African Americans became cowboys, ranchers, and homesteaders. Up to 25% of cowboys were black, but their contributions have been largely erased from popular history. Figures like Nat Love became legendary, yet the myth of the American West has predominantly focused on white pioneers. African Americans played significant roles in shaping the West, and their legacy is now being rediscovered. While the Great Migration brought promise, it also highlighted the dangers black communities faced. In Tulsa, Oklahoma, Greenwood, a prosperous black neighborhood known as Black Wall Street, became a beacon of black economic success in the early 1900s. Home to thriving black-owned businesses, banks, schools, and hospitals, Greenwood symbolized black autonomy and achievement. However, rising racial tensions culminated in the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921. A white mob, angered by black prosperity and incited by a false accusation against a young black man, attacked Greenwood, burning the neighborhood to the ground and killing hundreds of black residents. The massacre left millions of dollars in property damage, destroying one of the most successful black communities in the nation. Yet, black communities survived, showing strength, never giving up and reviving themselves. African Americans significantly shaped American culture through music, art, literature, and food. They pioneered genres like jazz, blues, rock, and hip-hop, with icons like Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington, and Chuck Berry revolutionizing global music. African American cultural traditions, like Southern soul food and the Gullah culture, continue to influence the broader American cultural landscape. African American activism during the 20th century extended beyond the U.S., connecting with global liberation movements. W.E.B. Du Bois, Malcolm X, and Angela Davis advocated for freedom and justice worldwide, linking the civil rights struggle to anti-colonial movements in Africa, the Caribbean, and Asia. Their activism influenced decolonization efforts and helped shape the global fight for equality and human rights. Despite the long history of systemic racism and discrimination, African Americans continue to grow and thrive today. From overcoming the brutal legacy of slavery and segregation to leading major social justice movements, African Americans have made outstanding progress in various fields. African American entrepreneurs, artists, scholars, and activists are excelling in business, culture, politics, and technology. We see black CEOs leading Fortune 500 companies, trailblazing artists reshaping global culture, and leaders in government making critical contributions to shaping policy. Were you taught in schools all the events that make black history? Or were the questionable and forbidden parts deliberately left out so you don't question the system? In the comment section right below, let us know whether you would like your children to know every painful and dark chapter of black history, or remain unaware and have a pleasant life. Would you like us to make more videos? If yes, please support us by subscribing to the Black History Archives and clicking the bell icon. You can check out more videos on our channel too.